Today's video shows us a few things, but number one is, if you're off-duty law enforcement, the rules of stupid apply to you more than anyone else.
Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host as always, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Saratoga Springs.
BakerTargets.com is where I get the targets you see me shoot all the time on Active Self-Protection Extra. They ship fast, their prices are great, and they have all kinds of targets, both for competitive shooting, defensive shooting, and fun too. Check them out. This guy right here is our off-duty deputy. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. He and his girlfriend are across state lines in New York, and they are living it up at the bar. They have gotten into an argument with 3 people inside the bar, and that argument has spilled outside the bar as the action is about to begin. And you're gonna see them kind of triangulate on him, and then you're gonna see pretty quick here that they are then going to attack him. And when they attack him here, you can see him trying to kind of back away, whatever, and also kind of sort of like showing like going towards his hip, whatever. And 3 guys gonna go after him here, knock him into the car, and he's not about that life and not about taking that butt whooping. So he is gonna then jump up and he is going to draw his firearm and start issuing commands to them, which is gonna send people scattering. Now he hasn't fired his gun yet until one of the other guys draws his own gun and points it at the deputy. They exchange shots. The deputy did hit that guy with at least 1 round in the chest. Now, while he's kind of holding long on that guy, you see all these other on-duty cops that show up. They were around the corner. It's a high, enforcement area because of all of the bars around. They issue him 7 commands to drop the gun. He either doesn't hear them or doesn't listen. They do shoot him. They put 10 holes in him. He did live through this. Haven't heard about any charges for anyone on this. We have a badge cam. Let's listen into it. The report that I read said that the officer had 10 wounds in him. I don't know if that was 5 rounds or 3 rounds that went through arms or whatever. I'm not sure on that. He did live and is expected to make a full recovery on that. The guy that he shot lived and is expected to make a recovery as well. I haven't been able to see any charges related to anything in the case. Hey Mike, fun fact, I lived in Saratoga Springs, New York for a year while I was training as a nuclear reactor operator in the United States Navy. Let's not talk about that in the lessons. Yes, Mike, let's talk about the rules of stupid, because we say we do not go stupid places with stupid people at stupid times and do stupid things. And it sure seems like the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning is probably violating at least 3 of those rules.
You know, John, I think some people are probably going to accuse me of almost being anti-cop at this point, but here's what I'm trying to say here. This off-duty officer has a reputation to uphold. He is potentially affecting the reputation of every officer in his department, every deputy in his department. The way we comport ourselves in public as law enforcement officers on and off duty affects everybody. So with that said, what I can't account for is these 3 other random guys with whom he's had some sort of altercation. Couple things. If you're law enforcement, it really behooves you not to be out at 3 in the morning at a bar. I don't know if you've been drinking or not. I have no idea. But if you consider, would the average citizen be given a pass for being at a bar at 3 in the morning with a firearm? The answer is no. So I think we have to do better in that regard. Now, with that said, I think having a gun on you should make you a more polite person, law enforcement or not. It should make you the most polite person in the room, to the point where you're going to deflect and try to avoid conflict at all costs. But for that reason, you've got a gun on you. So if there's a fight, there's a gun in that fight. And it might be you that gets to it might be somebody else. But I think conflict avoidance is the order of the day. Had he not been there, or had he been able to avoid conflict, we wouldn't be doing this video right now.
And I think it's a lifestyle of de-escalation, escape, and evasion. That's the lifestyle of an active self-protector, as a good, sane, sober, moral, prudent person. Now, that said, I don't know that he was, the instigator or whatever. At some point, you go, wait a minute, I've got 3 guys attacking me. And I think 3 guys who attack me, push me into a car, and are continuing their attack, I think that rises to the level of a reasonable, objective threat of death or great bodily harm, because 3 dudes curb stomping you next to a vehicle will absolutely put you in the hospital all day long. So would this be justified conduct for him to draw a firearm in this case? I think the answer to that is yes. And so I'm not saying at all that his actions to draw a firearm were not justified, and even to use his firearm when he did were quite justified. I think it was avoidable.
Yeah, I think that's, again, avoidance, the rule of the day here. Don't put yourself in this position. Okay, so now, too bad, so sad, that's already happened. You are in this position now. Is he justified drawing a gun? I'm going to agree with John, hesitantly, because I keep wanting to go back and say, well, if he hadn't been there, we wouldn't be in this position. But that's old news now. He is in this position. Can you draw a gun to protect yourself against 3 adult males assaulting you violently? The answer is yes. And again, this applies to cops and non-cops. Just a matter of if they've already shown a propensity for violence, they've knocked you to the ground and they're ganging up on you. I don't know a martial artist that could probably fight 3 people simultaneously. It's very, very difficult. So I think drawing the gun was appropriate. Shooting back at someone drawing their gun at you is appropriate. But again, I just wish none of this would have kicked off in the first place.
Yeah, and so again, if this deputy knew that one of these guys that was going to attack him had a gun on his person as well, I guarantee you he would have not been there to begin with. I guarantee you he would have done what it takes to not get in a gunfight with this guy, right? Like, hey man, hey guys, let me buy you all a beer before we get out of here, or whatever, to make that happen. Now, will I say, okay, wait a minute, what about the other guy? Was it maybe justified that he says, look, I wasn't involved in that, and then this guy starts pointing a gun at me, so I draw my own gun?
Yeah.
And sometimes we get into situations like this, we go, well, in that moment, what he did was justified, and then in the other side, what that guy did was justified. And so what we have is we have a big, ugly mess. And that's one of the reasons that I say you want to avoid every fight possible, because a lot of times it's not as cut and dried as we'd like it to be.
And since we had an LEO and a non-LEO at a bar with a firearm in the middle of the night, I think it's a good point. Booze and guns don't mix.
They
Period.
don't.
End of discussion. You shouldn't be cleaning your gun when you're under the influence of alcohol or anything else for that matter. So I think if both of these guys had left their gun home that night, what would have happened? Maybe this cop would have been seriously wounded or killed. I mean, it's tough to say, but like John said, we all made decisions that ended up at this impasse where 2 people might be justified at the same time in doing what they're doing, but again, shouldn't start in the first place. Let me transition to this part, John. This is so important to me. You need to be practicing. If you are with whatever agency, they should be training you at least once a year on what to do if you're in an off-duty shooting. How do you comport yourself? What do you do exactly? What do you do? We trained this ad nauseum to the points where our agents were annoyed with us and we covered it so much. But you need to, the minute your gun comes out, your head needs to be on a swivel. There could be a uniformed police officer there and you don't know it. And immediately in the aftermath of a critical incident, you get tunnel vision, you get auditory exclusion. So you need to overcome that. Sorry, you don't get to claim, well, I had tunnel vision, therefore I didn't see these cops coming. As a law enforcement officer, you need to overcome those things, pay attention to your surroundings, hopefully have a flat badge or something with you that you're holding up in the air and shouting the word police, 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 so that if on-duty law enforcement does encounter you, you at least have a fighting chance. But this guy, I don't know if he practiced that or not, but it's clear to John and I both, regardless of the fact that this officer is screaming, drop the gun, 7 times, we counted him, we sat here and counted him 7 times, he doesn't hear it. And so these uniformed officers did, I think, the only thing they could do. They have someone who's aiming a gun at someone who's not responding to commands. I think they gave him maybe a couple too many commands, frankly. But this is where we end up.
Now, as we go to the badge cam, obviously the officers hear shots from around the corner. They're coming hot, as they should come in hot, and they start issuing commands. Drop the gun. I think we listened 7 times. They say to drop the gun. I might get it. Guy's just been in a gunfight and may not be able to hear you, but is this justified conduct in order to shoot this guy who is pointing a gun? We've just seen a bunch of shots fired. Guy won't put the gun down. Is the entire public at risk? The answer to that is yes. Is it objectively reasonable that the officer shot this guy? It's unfortunate. I think that I wish that it hadn't happened. I do think it's a good reminder to private citizens too. You don't have the badge to wave around and say police. That listen, once that shooting is over, you got to break the tunnel vision away from where that potential threat was and either get the gun put away, get it out of your hands, or at the very least be looking around for responding officers.
If you're watching this channel for educational purposes, which is kind of the point, we hope that's why you're watching this channel, not just to watch violent encounters. If you're watching this and you carry a firearm, this is a great mental rep for you. You don't have to be a law enforcement officer. And like John said, you don't have that badge to wave around. And please, for the love of all that is holy, do not get one of those stupid concealed carrier badge things they sell on the internet. But this is a good mental rep for you. Pay attention to this, because this could be you out in the world having just shot someone completely justified. You've got to be able to overcome that auditory exclusion, that tunnel vision, those things. So that's something maybe to think about, practice at the range, but it's one of those discussions that you have to have with yourself that you need to make sure, okay, I got to keep this in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Now listen, oh boy, the one that I'm going to say here just made my butthole pucker is this officer walking right in front of a muzzle of an officer firing his gun. And you can see the muzzle flash has just gone off and the officer's just about to cross in front. Officers, or anyone, hear me. When somebody's got a gun up and on someone, they have priority and you do not go in front of them. You do not walk in front of them. You do not go, oh, I'm gonna play the limbo game and get under their line of fire. You let them have priority of fire.
Yeah, this kind of looks like the result of someone talking about big boy rules on a range where we don't worry about who's in front of who. Dude, I don't like this at all. It makes me very uncomfortable. We talked about this as we were breaking this down before we hit the record button. Man, that's just terrifying. This guy could have taken him right to the back of the dome, and it would have been on him. You need to recognize when your partner has a firearm out, do not get between the muzzle of that gun and whatever he's shooting at. In fact, actively avoid it. I think at the end of the day, John, this is a very, very sad chain of events. I think if you're law enforcement, you got to ask yourself, do I need to be out in the middle of the night at a bar with a firearm? Is that a good idea? The answer is absolutely never is it a good idea. That gun should change who you are in that moment. You need to be a more polite person. You have to bear in mind that you're upholding the reputation of your agency and your community. So I think we need to do better, make better decisions to better cover our ass.